Today we're going to take a look at the process of making lactic acid bacteria serum, which is a natural farming input that uses milk to culture Lactobacillus microbes, Lactobacillus bacteria. So the process is fairly simple. This is easy compared maybe to some of the other natural farming techniques like IMO. It's relatively easy compared to that. The start of the process is a starch. Traditionally, the starch is rice. The starch can be extracted from the rice by washing the rice in water and then straining that water off, and you have starch-filled water. Now you can use other starches for this as well. I've been successful at using oat starch. I'm sure you could use potato starch if you were careful. I'm sure any starch could work for this, but rice is going to be the easiest to work with from my experience. What you do is you take this water filled with starch and put it into a jar, and then you put a permeable lid on top of it. Now in this case I used a ball leak-proof one-piece lid and just put it on until it touched, and then backed it off a little bit, loosened it up a little bit so that some air can get in around there. You can also use a piece of cloth held on with a piece of string or a piece of paper towel held on with a rubber band. The objective is to allow air to pass in and out of the jar without things like mold spores and some of those contaminants getting in there and contaminating. So what happens is this starchy water ferments, and once it starts to ferment, it's ready to be used as your inoculant in your Lactobacillus culture. The way that you tell if your starch water is ready to add to your milk to start your lab's culture is if it smells sweet and kind of has that fermenty zing to it. If it smells alcoholic or putrid, it's either gone too far or it's been contaminated. This should usually take about a day or so for it to ferment and be ready to use. It is this process of the starchy water and the jar with the permeable lid that allows us to select for facultative Lactobacillus microbes. Because we're pulling microbes from the air and then culturing them in an anaerobic environment in the water, we are selecting for microbes that can function both aerobically and anaerobically. So what we'll do is we'll take this starchy water, we'll set it to the side for now, and we're going to take our milk, which is our other input in this, and we will put it into a gallon container or a large container, whatever you have. They can be plastic, glass would be better. I suppose you could use a stainless steel container, whatever you have on hand. As far as the milk is concerned, you can use store-bought milk like this, which has been ultra pasteurized and does not have any microbes in it because they're all dead. And then the rice wash water, the starch water, acts as the inoculant to put those microbes back in it and get that process, fermentation breakdown process started. You can also use raw milk, and raw milk will work just fine. In fact, it will probably work better. It actually doesn't need the starch water to inoculate it. That being said, if you use the starch water, you may get a more diverse set of Lactobacillus in your culture, which is a good thing, and you may also get the process to work faster. So take that in consideration. If you're using raw milk, you may want to speed it up a little bit. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with that. The difference between inoculating it and not inoculating it, I've always chosen to inoculate it because of hopefully getting a more diverse set of microbes. So go ahead and put the starch water in with our milk. Probably top this thing off a little bit here. Just make sure we got it all in there. Now, once we get it in our container, the next step is to make sure that we do not get contaminants in here. And the way we're going to do that is the same way we did it with the starch water. Is we are going to cover this with a permeable lid, in this case a piece of cloth, and we're going to tie it with a string. So we will wait for a few days and we will come back and take a look at what this has turned into. It's been about 2 days since we started our labs culture. We added our fermented starch water to the milk, and it's been sitting here for about 2 days. It was ready to go probably at about a day and a half to 2 days. So it will vary. Your time to let it culture and ferment will vary depending on your temperature and probably also how strong your or how ideal maybe your starch water culture was. So we're going to take the covering off here and take a look at how to tell if your labs culture is ready to go. Now, as you can see, it has separated into two parts. The lower third in this case is a yellowish liquid, and the upper 2/3 is a whitish curd. The part that we want is this liquid at the bottom. That is the serum, or the storable form of this culture that we're going to put into a jar, and we can put it in a refrigerator for up to 6 months. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to pour this through a sieve strainer. We're going to strain this off, and then we will put our liquid into a jar. Trying to do this carefully so I don't end up with curds all over the place. So we've finished straining out the serum from the curds. We ended up with about 2 quarts of curds and nearly 2 quarts of the serum. So you can store this in a refrigerator for up to 6 months. You probably can store it longer. To maintain its potency, it probably should be used before 6 months. A little of this goes a long ways. It can be used in inoculating Bokashi. That is the primary use that I keep this on hand for, is inoculating Bokashi barrel compost. It can also be used to break up anaerobic pockets in your compost piles. It can be used to inoculate super magro. It can be used to inoculate a haylage or silage ferment that you're doing. It can be used to inoculate that. It is a very dominant microbe, so you don't want to use this too much. Otherwise, you will end up with almost entirely Lactobacillus. So use it in the right places, use it sparingly, and it will serve you well. It is a very powerful microbe. It's a very powerful tool in your soil health and soil healing journey. The curds can also be used as a cheese. They can be used, we've used them on salads and other ways like that. It is edible and it is good. It has a lot of really healthy bacteria in there for you. Think along the lines of maybe a kefir or something like that. It's very, very healthy, so don't let this go to waste. It can also be used to inoculate your compost piles, especially if you're doing a buried compost, Bokashi, any anaerobic compost. It can be used to inoculate that. It can be used in a lot of the places that the serum can. It's just maybe not as convenient to use as the liquid form is. Thanks for watching.